What's new? It's GNU, and welcome back to another Minecraft video. Today we're going to be discussing note blocks, Minecraft's musical method. Note blocks are a really interesting thing added to Minecraft, which allow you to express your creativity even further through music. Um, so today we're going to be discussing all about the different instruments and sounds, the range of tunes you can make, how to tune them, redstone timing, connections, and note block texture packs. This is part one of my note block basics little two-part tutorial effort to help people make their own music in Minecraft. How I feel. Anyway, so let's begin with the note block. The note block is very easy to craft. To craft a note block, all you need is a plank of any type. Make a ring like that, and simply put a redstone dust in the middle, and you get a note block. A note block, when normally placed on any random block, will often produce a piano or harp-like sound. There's some specific blocks that change the sound of a note block, and we'll discuss that a little bit later. But as you can see, as you right-click on a note block, a note appears and it begins to tune the block. This range is very adjustable, and that's how you, in general, make music with a note block. And if I set my game to survival mode really quick, you can see that the easiest way to break a note block is with an axe, and it will actually make a little sound. For a note block to make a sound, it must have at least one block of air above it. So now it can make a sound. But if that block is occupied, nothing happens. Note blocks can be heard from up to 48 blocks away. There's my little note block at the end. And here is grass lined up for 48 blocks. And that is how far away that last block is the last place you can hear the note block. And as you get further away, the sound, the volume decreases, and it gets harder and harder to hear the note block. So it's obviously easiest if you're very close to the note block, or within, about half that distance. The sound is much louder and easier to hear. And because I made some grass, now rabbits are spawning all over the place. When utilizing note blocks and their sounds, there are 16 different instruments, and each one has a range of 25 pitches or 2 octaves. This range, however, differs. Some have lower octaves and higher octaves, which we'll talk about when we get to the individual sounds and pitches. Once again, if I go into survival mode, the default pitch for a note block is F sharp. So if I just left click that, that's an F sharp right there. And then if you right click it, it tunes it one semitone or half step upward, moving to G, and so on, sharps and flats according. And then when you tune it up to the very top note, which is again a high F sharp, and you right click one more time, it brings it back down to the low F sharp and cycles around again. So it tunes upward. So those were some of the basics about note blocks, how to tune them, and what they do. But now it's time to get into the real meat of the matter, which is, of course, the instruments themselves, the 16 different pitches, and how to make them. So for a note block to be pitched, what really matters is the block it is on top of. So if you find most blocks, such as grass blocks and other random blocks that are not pitch blocks, will result in a harp or piano-like sound. To me, it sounds a little bit more like a harp, but whatever. So that's kind of the default, and any blocks that aren't mentioned here should produce this sound. Next up is wood. So wood and all kinds of wood products make a sound like a bass, or rather a stringed bass. Yeah, like that. And actually, this works for pretty much any wood product, for stairs, slabs, stripped wood or logs or any type of that, or even fences. So any wood products will create the stringed bass sound. And the bass and wood kind of sounds are actually 2 octaves lower than the normal 2-octave range, though they still span 2 octaves. It's kind of confusing, but technically its lowest note is 2 octaves lower than the harp or piano. The default range is lowest note. So yeah, that's the wood. Next sound we can get is a snare drum, which is made by sand, gravel, or any type of concrete powder. So that sounds like this. And it is also pitched. It's a little more subtle and kind of difficult because it's a snare drum, but it is pitched, and you can change all of these for sand, gravel, and concrete powder. Next instrument we have is the Clicks and Sticks, as it's called, which is made by placing a note block on top of either glass or sea lantern. That's it. Again, it's kind of hard to tell, but it is pitched. Yeah. This obviously works from sea lantern as well. So Clicks and Sticks. The next instrument can be made by placing on a huge number of different blocks. So this instrument is the bass drum. That kind of sound. And it is made by placing on top of stone, or I believe stone variants, netherrack, either type of nylium, I think crime obsidian as well as the normal obsidian, and all kinds of ores, quartz, diamond, coal, any, now the nether gold, any type of ore will all make the bass drum sound. Next up, we have a block of gold, or when you place a note block on top of a gold block. Oh, well, you just heard it a little bit. It makes a bell sound. Yeah. So this is a bell or glockenspiel sound, and it is 2 octaves higher than the standard range, again, from the piano harp, or the default. So it's much higher pitched. Next up, we have clay. This is actually a clay block, and when you place a note block on top of that, you get a flute sound. And this is the standard range again. And yeah, it's a flute. That's what you get from a clay block. Following that, we have packed ice, which is kind of interesting. And from that, you get chimes. They sound pretty cool, and they are also 2 octaves above the standard range. They get really high. And then moving on, we have wool. So wool makes a guitar sound. And a guitar sound is 1 octave lower than the standard range. Following that, we have a xylophone, which is made by placing it on top of a bone block, I believe. That is a bone block, yeah. Yeah, so you get a xylophone sound, and this is also 2 octaves above the standard range, so it's really high near the end. Then we have a block of iron, which creates an iron xylophone or vibraphone-like sound. That's pretty cool. Next, there's soul sand. We're getting closer to the end, and that creates a cowbell-like sound. Very interesting. After that, we have a pumpkin, which creates a sound like a didgeridoo, which is really cool. If you ask me, this is one of my favorite note block sounds. The block of emerald, if you place a note block on top of a block of emerald, you get a bit or square wave sound, which sounds confusing. It sounds like an electronic synthesizer, really. Next, we have hay bales, and if you put a note block on top of a hay bale, you get a banjo. And that's pretty cool indeed. Sounds just like a banjo. And finally, at the end of our very long list, number 16, the last instrument is a pling, or electric piano, by putting a note block on top of glowstone. That's pretty cool. It's got like a little bit of a lasting effect, but that is the final instrument. So that is all of the different instruments, all 16 of them, and each one, if you remember, starts with a default pitch of F sharp, going up a semitone or half step, each right click, and a left click plays the exact same note. So now we're going to move on to some references. If you want to translate real life music or sheet music into note blocks without transposing, you might want to know what pitches you're playing. Obviously, you can just work out from the F sharp and count, but that can be kind of annoying and difficult. Also, especially depending on the key of the song. So on the screen right now are some reference images that should help you with the Minecraft note block. So there you can see a piano image, which shows you the comparative notes on the piano. And these are marked by a number. And the way to actually tell this for yourself is using a number. So if you tune a note block and then go into the debug screen, or F3, and look at the far right of the screen, you can see Minecraft note block, instrument harp, note 10. So that tells you both the instrument and the note. And if you look at these reference sheets, you can tell that note 10 is an E. So you can use the debug screen. That is one possibility. There's also here a sheet music reference, which compares the note block numbers to sheet music. And this is for treble clef, but obviously this could be changed to bass clef with a little bit of effort, or you can just look further on the internet. There's also a way to tell the pitch by the color of the note. If you can tell, it changes ever so slightly each time. And while it is rather fleeting, if you get good at it, you can eventually tell. So here is another reference chart for the colors of the note compared to the actual pitch. But this is very difficult, especially if you're trying to create a detailed song or transposing something from real sheet music into Minecraft note blocks. So let me suggest something to you. There are lots of different Minecraft note block resource packs or texture packs that you can put on. And these show you often the instrument and the pitch of the note block you're looking at, and changes as you tune it. There's several examples online. It would take just a quick internet search to find all kinds of different things. If you're considering seriously getting into note block songs and messing around with big note block arrangements in Minecraft, you probably want to have one of those on, especially if you're working from already existing music or sheet music that you've written down. If you're working just from your ear, it's not as necessary, but still advised. So that is the last part, referring directly to note blocks and their sounds and how to tune them. But now we have to get to one more thing that's very important if you're going to be doing your own note block creations, which is timing. So the method for timing note blocks has to do with redstone. But before you freak out, don't worry, it has very little to do with the complicated redstone contraptions and stuff that you might see on YouTube. It's very simple, mostly having to do with repeaters and timing. So there is a way to translate note block timings and repeater timings into real life timings. So for those of you more technical Minecrafters, you might know that one redstone tick is the length of 2 game ticks, which is equivalent to 0.1 seconds, or a tenth of a second. So to power a note block with redstone, all you have to do is run a redstone signal into the note block. This would be a perfect example. Just use a lever, and it produces the note that it has been previously tuned to. Turning it off or removing the redstone signal does nothing. Only adding an original redstone signal does something. To change the pitch of the note that's going to be played, you just right-click to tune it to your desired sound. So that's what you want. Then it'll always give you that sound because powering it with redstone does not change the sound. Besides that, redstone signals can actually pass through note blocks, meaning that you can change them. So if I make it day again and set myself to survival, I can tune my notes however I want them, and provided there is a repeater coming out the back like this scenario, if it's on flat and there's a repeater coming out the back, the signal will continue on to the next note block, which is very rapid. It's a super rapid succession because one redstone tick that I've set here is actually only a tenth of a second, so it's almost instantaneous. But there is a difference noticeable. Now if I set this to 4 ticks, that'll be now, instead of 1/10 of a second, it should be 4/10 of a second, or nearly half a second between. That's also very noticeable. And to add more than 4 ticks between it, you obviously just place more repeaters. And now I've got 8 ticks, and so you can increase the length like this. Here's a 10-tick setup, 4, 4, and 2. That gives us 10 ticks, which would mean there's 1 second between when this one goes and when that one goes. So if we play it, it should sound like this. Dun, dun. That's 1 second in between. That's a 1 second delay. And if you turn it off, again, nothing happens and those depower. So those are some of the basics, but there are more ways to expand this operation. So if you run some redstone into it like this, where it's programmed to play all the notes at the same time, you can play a chord. Very nice. So this is one way to play multiple notes once, and obviously this is only limited to your imagination. And obviously the redstone signal strength, but repeaters can increase that So really, you can play just about as many notes at once as you want. And with the different ranges from different instruments, you actually have a total range of 72 semitones or 6 octaves between the lowest note on the bass and the highest note on the xylophone or chimes. So the last thing I want to talk about is translating musical terminology like quarter notes and such into Minecraft timings. If you're not very well educated in musical terminology, or you're just not very interested in translating stuff from, say, sheet music or real life songs, then you should probably skip this part and go to the time on the screen. However, for those who are a little more educated in the musical standpoint and know a bit about musical terminology, then it's time to talk about some math. So, one redstone tick, or the time it takes from a signal to go through a repeater, at default, is 0.1 seconds, or a tenth of a second. So the time it should take from the signal to go from my lever to the note block should be a tenth of a second, or very instantaneous. That's almost perfectly instantaneous. There's only a tenth of a second delay because of this repeater. Now, since we know that one repeater, or one redstone tick, when a repeater is set to default, is a tenth of a second, that means that technically we can actually fit in 600 notes in 1 minute, or 600 BPM, if you're counting the note as the counting figure. So if we listen to this, I've just set up a scale right here, a chromatic scale. That is really fast. This is 13 note blocks right here, or about as much space as I wanted to go. Though you could fit, like I said, almost 590 more and have them all play in 1 minute. At that point, it's more difficult to keep them all in render distance. Anyway, yeah, you can get crazy fast with this delay. But, of course, as soon as you add another tick, it gets longer. So, technically, with no other delay than 1 tick, a redstone or line of note blocks would be running at 600 BPM, or more specifically 600 notes per minute, because you might not always be counting a note as the dominant beat. So in music, 120 BPM is very common. In fact, some music apps actually have that as their default because of how common 120 BPM is for music. But it's not so good for Minecraft, so the math will be on the screen. But if a quarter note equals 120 BPM, then 5 ticks equal a quarter note, or a quarter note is 5 ticks, which means that an eighth note and a 16th note, subsequent half values, are not possible. Of course, you can always double the length, so you can do half notes and whole notes, but you cannot get faster than that quarter note or dominant beat. So if you look at the math for 150 BPM, you'll realize that that's probably the best for Minecraft. So if a quarter note equals 150 beats per minute, then 1 quarter note is 4 ticks in Minecraft, which means that you can do an eighth note, which is 2 ticks, and even a 16th note, which is 1 tick, which makes it way easier to translate music into Minecraft. And obviously you can still double that for 8 ticks, which is a half note, or 16 ticks, which is a whole note, or 1 measure if you're in 4/4 time. So yes, that's for you music nerds. But technically, I'm saying you can fit a lot of notes into 1 minute. You can play them very fast, or of course, you can really pull out the repeater timings and make it very slow. You can even, if you're up for it, use other redstone timing systems to trigger note blocks. Though, of course, if you're going to make an actual song, chances are all you will need is repeaters, because even just a few of those can give you a delay of well over a second. So that's going to be it for today. This is just part 1 of the tutorial, but part 2 will mostly be about making actual songs in Minecraft, using the different instruments properly, and it's going to involve a little bit more music theory and technical terms. So I hope you enjoyed and you benefited from this, and remember, if you're going to be working on a giant note block project, it is highly recommended by not just me, but other people probably. Point is, it's very well advised. You should get a resource pack that tells you what note and what instrument is playing. It makes things way easier. And in the second part of the tutorial, I'll have one of those resource packs on as we're making songs. But that'll be it for today. So thank you so much for watching. If you liked and you benefited from this video, hit the like button. And if you're not subscribed, please consider it. You can watch more of my content. So thank you very much again. Hope you all enjoyed, and goodbye.